Yeah, let's, wherever you feel, and I'll just kind of follow you with the camera.
Okay.
So it'll probably hurt more tomorrow than it hurts today. Yeah! Get it.
I have really good audio, so.
Oh, so should we be quiet? What?
No, you're fine, you're fine. I'll be pointing at June.
Okay. So this, should I start? Just start?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. So this is kind of the heart of the project, and our mandate from the Library of Order and the Merced was to locate the well that is kind of central to the whole idea of having a fortified plazuela. And so knowing that it was back here and having our elders like Ermelinda and Palmita and Agustin kind of try to help us figure out where it was, we knew, of course, in the center of a fortified plaza it's going to be in the middle. And what we did is we excavated down to the point into the pre-settlement Pleistocene lake bed deposit of what I'm calling abiquiu clay. This is beautiful white clay, and you can see where the pick marks are, where these first colonist settlers in this plaza cut their well down. And if Rafaelita's plazuela and her well, which are likely contemporaneous, are any indication, and they were great guidance for us, her well is 60 feet deep. We're a little bit below grade on Rafaelita's well, so you can imagine this hand-dug well probably went 35, 40 feet through this stuff, which is literally bulletproof. And I'll show you over there where the adobes had embedded bullets. But on top of that hand-dug round well, our ground-penetrating radar found a square footprint, which was very puzzling to us until we went to Rafaelita's house. And you can actually see the change in color from where the adobe bricks were laid up around this square footprint, which itself overlaid the circular hand-dug well. When we went to Rafaelita's house, we saw that she had a square concrete pad with a wooden superstructure to keep the kids from falling in, right? And then she had her well house and her cranks on top of that. Well, here they didn't have concrete, so they used adobe. And where they put the footers for the posts, the big fuertes to hold the crank drawn bucket, they have big stones. The other one of which is missing because the later construction of the French drain obliterated it. And then you can see in the side walls the adobe melt patterning that capped the well over the years. As the well collapsed, or was potentially, we don't know if it was maybe contaminated, we don't know why, but eventually as the well collapsed and was filled in with trash, the lower levels contained, colonial period, Mexican period, territorial period trash, all the way up to the last little pocket, which contained modern trash, things like hacksaw blades and things, before they capped it with this concrete slab that went across the very top, a light concrete cap. And then the adobe washing off of Palmita's walls and off of the walls that would become the library walls capped it, and Palmita put in this bench wall and this concrete slab to prevent the runoff from undercutting her adobe. And that's why this corner of the plazuela is so much higher, right, than it is down there. Whoever built this stub wall right here, this building, with the utility room that has the hot water heater and stuff for the library, this is only in a very, very recent history. And when they did this, they put in this French drain. And if you come around this side, you can see where the French drain is intrusive to the feature of the well. And all the way down through here, you can see where the cut happens for the French drain. But we hit our mandate to find the well and expose it, and so, which is why we left this unit open, so that the community members and the public and other visitors could see the well that we were tasked to find. And so we left it open just for that viewing opportunity. And then if you continue on over here, you see where the French drain continues on and interrupts this unit. But this unit's a really good one. That very same surface that they dug the well into is down here, right? That pre-contact surface. And the first thing they did, like any defensive plaza, is they wanted to get walls up over their head, or roof over their head, and walls around their plaza, and to protect that well. And the first thing they did is they put in the posts for the jacales. And you can actually see from this side where those posts extend up into the side wall of the unit. You can see the discoloration. And our ground penetrating radar found the post line for these jacales marching all the way down into the plaza there. And so you can imagine they set these things in, plastered it with that beautiful clean abiquiu clay, and then eventually when they got everything closed off and they were ready to do it they expanded immediately, like anybody doing a renovation. They got a bigger room, set a foundation line of stones, and started building their adobe walls on top of that. And with each successive layer coming up towards the adobe walls, the adobe gets a little more dirty. It's got a little more ash in it, a little more material, until what was once plaza space over here, this Coyote fence was in here, right, until the movie. All this plaza space, all that activity, feasts and dance and visitors, all that material laps up against the outside, and successive layers of adobe being plastered to the outside of the wall contain things like pottery and stone tool chips and everything else. But that's a much later occupation. The earliest occupation of this site, all of those adobes are clean, 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 which is really, really odd, except to say that they probably set their first plazuela in a place that was respectful of their neighbors and didn't raid their ash piles for material to make their adobes, which is why the adobe was so clean. Over in this unit that's getting covered up.
It's uncovered.
Yeah, would you guys just let me take a real quick look at it? Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Thank you.
That's okay.
So what's going on in these units is, now that we're interior to what was the room block, we know that from Augustine, our elders, oral traditions, that there were multiple rooms here. And what we believe we found, starting with these footer stones and these dressed stones, going all the way out over to here, was kind of a division between the two rooms, right? You can see the French drain again, cutting through, obliterating a portion of the wall as it comes through, diving down as they made the adjustment for the angle of the pipe, and diving down again to finish that drain pipe. So everything above this level is disturbed, right, because of the French drain. But on this side of the wall, it's much more kitcheny material. Small fragments of animal bone, cooking pottery, things like that. There's a feature that was kind of following remember those original post holes we were talking about? Well, here's one right here on the sidewall. And coming out this way, when that was still the wall of the house, we had, again, that plaza space or potentially a different room lapping up as a material, and Heather excavated a concentration of artifacts here that contain some very interesting colonial stuff. Pottery from Zia, pottery from the Jemez Pueblos, pottery from down in the Tewa Valley, as well as locally made pottery stuff from Casitas Viejas in the El Rito Valley, and potentially even made here, and of course, check with Charlie's book to be sure. But and so on this side we have these thermally altered features, the cooking stuff, all of that just suggests that this room had more of that kitcheny feel, whereas if you go over into this room on this side of the wall, we had more of the stone tool making, right? Arrowheads, blades, scrapers, and a couple of gun flints for the flintlock rifles. So that was going on over here. So a real difference in the kind of uses of space over there. And we're hoping that when the library restores to this footprint, they'll again make two rooms, depending on how y'all feel about that. And then in the very front, one of the things we were wondering is, why did the wall collapse? Why did this part of the room block in Plazuela fail when the rest is still standing? And we think the answer to that comes from what we learned from what Virgil and David showed us up at San Antonio, and what Charlie showed us up at Moki. And that is that you can see these post holes. And these are where the strong logs were put in along the front wall of the more robust Hakale structure. And, if it was working, they never quite got around to replacing it with adobe, I think. And we can actually see in the ground penetrating radar this line of huge posts marching out along this way. And so potentially this room block, unlike the rest, was more of a composite structure with more like, the fuertes in the front, plastered Hakale, and all the way back where it made it to the adobe wall, back to the line I showed you back there. And the interesting thing is that you could see where people were trying to save it. There's cobbles and concrete kind of embedded in the wall where they were trying, and patches, and they were trying to save it. But where those junctions came together, especially as in later years when they were adding windows and doors and things, it was really making that portion of the wall weak. I think that's what collapsed the wall there. And Manu Dexter remembers looking in the windows of the kind of abandoned room after it started to fail. And that story makes a lot of sense, that at least a portion of the composite design came apart, And then finally, where the wall stubs were at Palmita's house, were demolished to make way for this patio for what would become the library building. So, I mean, that's kind of the generalized story. And we also noticed in 1920, so there's a picture from the turn of the century that shows what was left of this Hakala construction. But then in 1929, right here, another room appears suddenly. And in our ground penetrating radar, we actually have a prepared floor surface all under here, nicely leveled out. Shows up with a really clear signal, but then again, it's only been here for 80 years, so it's relatively young. And I don't know what the library wants to do, but potentially they could add that as another room, a third room onto this room block. And that's kind of what our team was looking for up here, where you see these changes in color and stone foundation, potentially rocks. We're not sure what was going on right here. But this would be the farthest margin of that prepared surface that we were finding in the ground penetrating radar, and we were hoping to define that a little bit up here. But because of the adobe melt, because of the restructuring and repurposing of the patio, this becomes a very confusing space for us, and I would say that our best bet is to just stick with what the ground penetrating radar says over here and stick with the very obvious post construction that make up the front end of the original 1700s Plazuela. And that's pretty much all I have to tell you about that.
So what is your hope for this experience for the community?
Oh wow, for the community? To hope that we did right by them, that we hit our mandate, that as we worked here, that we were respectful in our engagements with them, and show our gratitude for the huge honor of actually working in abiquiu. Also to make sure that the data that we've collected, they have the raw data, but to put together a narrative interpretation that assists them in not only restoring the footprint of the building, but also understanding a little more about the sequence of construction, the kinds of technologies, the uses of space that might be interesting. It seems like at our community forum the other night, there was a lot of interest in how these things came together, and thinking about what are the factors in the uses of space and the renovation of the building and the maintenance of the walls that can tell us a little bit more about preserving these historic structures, because you're standing on, the most important site in Spanish colonial New Mexican archaeology, and understanding a little bit more about how to preserve these buildings and understand their structure and function is not just something that archaeologists care about, but that the Senate community cares about, and other interested parties and historians care about. And I think that this work and the opportunity they gave us to be here and do this work helps us get at some of those goals. Sound good?
Perfect.
All right.
Yeah.